Learning Bava Kama. Today's daf is daf Nun Dalid. We are up to the very bottom of the page, Nun Gimel Amud Beis. So our Mishnah said that if a shoyer falls inside a boy with its bundle, then we say that shoyer or a person falls inside and dies. We learn out shoyer v'loi adam and chamoyer v'loi kelim, and the chamoyer without his bundle that's on top. So now the Gemara is going to say, and we already had this in the beginning of the Masechta, not everyone agrees that if a chamor falls in with the kalim, you are pater from kalim. Machlekes in the paskim what exactly kalim means. Kalim literally means pots and pans, or it means anything, clothing, anything else apart from living beings. So says the Gemara here, you should know about 5 lines to the bottom of the page that Masnis in the Lake Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah does not conform with Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya we learned Rabbi Yehuda mechayiv on this kalim. Rabbi Yehuda actually holds that if somebody's pots and pans or other things, vessels fall inside a kalim or clothing, you're responsible. Now let's understand what's their argument. My time with the Rabbanan. Why does the Rabbanan say potter? Amakra in the pasuk with nafal shama shoyra chamay. If all there an ox or a donkey, why do you have to give 2 examples for? Just say one example, or just say shoyra chamay. Why do you give 2 examples? So we dashen is coming to exclude shoyr v'lo adam, only animals, not people, and chamoy v'lo kelim, donkeys, and not their freight, not their baggage. Rabbi Yehuda says you're right, but however, there's an extra word here, oy. Could have said shoyr v'chamoy. By saying oy is l'rabas as I came. Oy actually comes to include. Oy comes to include the kelim as well. The Rabbanan, what do they do with the word oy or? It's extra. Says the Gemara, they need the word oy. If we wouldn't have said the word oy, I would have thought I would have thought that both of them have to fall in together before you're responsible. But if either one falls in, you're not. So I need oy to come in and to separate it. It's actually a machlekes Tanai, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Yonasan. Whenever the Torah says, kabed as a vichav esim, all that doesn't mean that you only have to give cover when they're both it together, when it comes to cursing or other things. Or do we automatically say they're 2 separate cases? Rabbi Yeshua always says that we assume they're together unless the Torah clearly separates them. So this Gemara seems to conform with Rabbi Yeshua, as some of the Rishonim point out. Rabbi Yehuda, how does he know to divine? Now that he used the word oy to tell you that even if the bundles fall in, you're responsible. What does he do with the word oy? How does he? So how does he know to say that either a shoyr or chamay you're responsible? The v'nafal. It says a single v'nafal it fell. If we're talking about if you need the shoyr and the chamay to fall in together, then we would have said v'naflu. They would fell in by saying v'nafal and it fell or he fell in or it fell in. Well, that's talking about one item. Either the shoyr chamay. Rabbanan says no. V'nafal too much. The word v'nafal, even though it's written singular, could be also for a set. A set is also written in singular, as Rashi brings a number of examples. For example, it says va'asa b'tzalel ba'oliyah, 2 people, but it says va'asa singular because they came in together as a set, as a group, and you have the right to use a singular word for a group. So that's why the Rabbana say we needed to try to say va'oy to separate the 2 to tell you if one or the other fall in Yosef Chayiv. Says the Gemara, V'emal, that's a question. The nafal, anything falls in the boy, that's a klal. We have a rule. We say in davening in the morning. You have a klal, a generic, an all-inclusive term, and then you have a prat, which is very specific. If all you have is a klal and a prat, we have a rule. Ein b'klal ela masha b'prat. That the prat, the limiting word, is coming to explain and to limit the klal, the general word. If then you have another klal afterwards, the second klal comes to be marbe ke'ena prat. The second klal comes to become much more inclusive. But so why do you have a prat before? To tell you whatever you're including has to have certain similarities to the prat. Some say you have to have 1 similarity to prat or 2. We actually had more in the whole discussion whether the first klal is the main klal or the second klal is the main klal. The bottom line is, they want to ask the question, it's a klal and a prat, which means it should be very limiting, even within the animal world itself, it should be very limiting as to what you're responsible for. Let us say, the nafal is a klal. Shoyr b'chamoy is a prat. You're already being very specific what kind of animals. Klal prat, ein b'chlal masha prat. Let's limit it to what? Shoyr b'chamoy, only those 2 animals, an ox or a donkey. If a sheep falls in, maybe you're potter. Says Amri, no. Afterwards, it says, I'll tell you. It says Bal Habor Yishalom. The next word in the pasuk is that the Bal Habor, the owner of the bird, should pay, and that's for what? For anything. So that's again another inclusive word. is klal prat klal. Klal prat. You have to allocate a prat. It has to be similar. So when I ask a question, so you're telling me it's a klal prat klal. Still, it has to be similar to the prat. So, for example, birds which are not similar to the prat, maybe they should be excluded. If a bird falls in, a chicken falls in, and gets hurt or dies, you should be put. For example, don't like a prat. Ma prat before living. So, first thing Gemara says. The first Gemara says that no, that we compare all living beings together, except an Adam. Ma prat mefurish balachayim, living thing. I'm called balachayim. Ask more question. Ma prat mefurish davar shmilosim etam magamasa. Both of these examples say a cow and ox. Also, a donkey when they die, they're metame by touching or by lifting. Okay, so any animal from the animal kingdom or chaya dies in the body, gets hurt, you have to pay. It generates tumor. Okay, but what is excluded? But for birds, for fowl, you should be potter. Why? Because they do not generate tumor, maga and masa. Says the Gemara. Imke, no. If the Torah was out to exclude birds, nichtav rachmana kad prota. Let the Torah just say shoyd or just say chamar, and I would say klal partiklal. Anything which is similar to matame. Why give two protim shoyd and chamar to be a bit more inclusive to include also birds? So you want to know? You think one of them is extra? I'll prove it to you. They're both not extra. We need shoyd and chamar, and therefore there's nothing extra. Birds should be excluded. Hi nichtav. Which of these two should be written? Ikos or shoyd. The Torah would give example. Let's say use of the paradigm of shoyd. How many I would have said? Well. You know what kind of animals you're responsible for? An animal that could have been brought on the base of in the mizbeach, like a shor, and you're denying the Eibishter an opportunity of bringing a carbon. So that's why you have to pay. In only those animals that can be brought in the mizbeach, yes. But those animals cannot be brought in the mizbeach, no. That's why it had to say chamay. So let it just say chamar. No, v'yikas rachmana chamay. What do we know is unique about chamar? Chamar, the firstborn, is also a bchor. You have a sheep, a firstborn is a bchor, and so is a chamar. I would say, well, the only animals that it falls in a bird that you have to pay for is an animal that has some kedusha in it. That the firstborn is considered a bchor, and you have to redeem it with a sheep and so on. Have I mean a kaddish b'bchor in only those animals that have the firstborn as holy. But for example, but those are not, for example, horses and camels, they don't have, then no. That's why the Torah says and chamor. So there's nothing extra. So the question goes back. Maybe birds you should be potter. Klal prata klal was similar to shor chamor. Elo makra. There's another passage where it says v'hameis yeloi. Anything that dies belongs to the person. So therefore we say that what? Birds also die. Anything that dies. And that's why you have to pay. Call Dava Misa. So I'm going to ask a question. I have a problem. If you tell me only things that die, kalim don't die, right? Pots and pans, they don't die. So if they don't die, why, according to the Rabbanon, do I need a pasuk to tell me you don't have to pay for kalim utensils? You don't pay anyway. It doesn't die. By may see only things that die. You're telling me that including fowl, because they die. Well, kalim don't die. And Rabbi Yehuda says that kalim are included. You have to pay. Why you pay? They don't die. Ask the Gemara. Ben Rabbanan the Kamai became exclude Kalim. Ben Rabbi Yehuda the Kamai became that include Kalim. Kalim ben Misa. Kalim die. Amri, we say yes. Shvira son zuhi misa son. When somebody dies, you can't repair it. Kalim, when they break, they fall apart, they fragment. That's it. That's their form of death. Every single thing has their form of death. So kalim can be included in dying. According to Rabbanan, needs to be excluded. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's included. Well, it's not excluded. Says the Gemara, okay, but Rav, remember what Rav said before? Not like Shmuel that says it's the impact of the bird that you're paying for. It's the stale ear. Wow, kalim, stale ear have no effect on kalim. By a living creature, yes, the stale ear, the foul ear has an effect, an adverse effect, but not by kalim. So why do Rabbanan need to exclude kalim? And Rabbi Yehuda, how can you make chayiv kalim? Ask the Gemara. It's the stale ear. Where does stale ear come into kalim? I have to confess, I don't understand anymore answer, but this is what Gemara answers. Amri will answer, yes, certain kalim get affected by the stale ear. Chadati, brand new kalim, the mifki bahavola, they get affected by the stale ear. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Clothing, maybe it absorbs that terrible smell, and you can never get it out of it from there again, which proves like those poskim that kalim doesn't only mean pots and pans, but also means clothing. But if it's pots and pans, you just wash it out. What do it mean that kalim, brand new kalim, are affected by the stale in the bird? Not sure. Says the Gemara, you telling me that the Hamesi or anything that dies comes to tell you that even foul anything that dies, you're responsible for. But we just learned yesterday and a while ago as well that we use Hamesi for other drushes. Either we learned that you're olive that bailim metaplim benavela that the owners have to deal with the carcass, they keep it, and then the mazik pays the difference. Or what we learned the last few days is Rava. Rava told us that that shor psula hamikdashim. If there's an animal was consecrated, then it contracted a defect. So you redeem it for the base hamikdash. Now that you redeemed it, you're the owner. It's considered shorei, you're the shorei of your friend. You're the owner because you can eat it from everything else. But because you don't really have full ownership, you cannot feed it to your dogs. And the Torah says, so therefore, if the victim by a boyer is a sheriff, so you don't have to pay because you can't say it's not totally under the control of the owner because he can't feed it to his dogs. So we're using Bahamesi for something totally different. Says you want to behind Bahamesi boy like we need for Rava. Rava said, Sheriff Sulam McDoshin Shalom. If Sheriff falls in the boy, Potter, the owner of the boy is exempt. It says Bahamesi but Misha Meshloi, only if you have full control. Yotzezeh, when it comes to Psul Midoshin, Sheina Meshloi. So we need that passing for another halacha. You can't use it to teach you about fowl and poultry. Elamakra, another pasuk. It says in the pasuk, Kesev Yoshiv Lebailois, that you pay money. It says Balaboy should pay, and again, then it says Kesev Yoshiv, you pay money. It seems to be redundant. Le Rabbas called the East Lebailim. Lebailim is extra. Of course, you're going to pay. Who else are you going to pay to? Not to the owners. To tell you that anything that has an owner, you have to pay. Therefore, poultry is included. Therefore, we need a special pasuk to tell you, but not kalim, and therefore, according to Abuda, we have a pasuk to tell you kalim, you're included. So the more asked, I feel Kalim, if you tell me anything that has an owner, then Kalim also have an owner. Why don't you pay for that? And an Adam also has a Makros. The more answers that we said before. Shoid is the Loy Adam. The Torah gives you examples to tell you only an ox, but not a person. You don't pay for a person who dies. You do pay for a person for damages, but not for dying. And we dash in Chamay with like Kalim. That's why we exclude Kalim, even though there's an owner. Or Rabbi Yehuda, the Kamarbelu Kalim. Rabbi Yehuda says no. We have to use the word oi to come include Kalim. It's Bishlem. I need shoy to be made Adam. I need shoy in the pasuk to tell you to exclude that you don't pay for a person who died in your birth. El Chamay, you should look out, be more careful. Chamay, Maim and Maibel. According to Rabbi Yehuda, why does the Torah highlight a donkey to teach you what, to exclude what? According to Rabbi Yehuda, you do pay for pots and pans and all that. So what does the Chamay come and teach you? Rabba says you're right. We don't know. Chamoy the boy that the word chamoy, and it said that when you lost an object, we're going to learn later on. It says in the pasuk, it gives a number of examples, including a film, clothing, and the words. Every word in that pasuk we learn something from Shari, but we don't know. Or the Gemara doesn't mention what we learned from the word said. Why give so many examples? And one of them is a sheep. So said the word sheep when it comes to an aveda. Once it says anything that your friend lost, you have a mitzvah of returning it. Then why does it try to give a number of examples? The fact it says chamoy, a donkey. Then it says shoy, a cow. It says a sheep, and then it says suma and your clothing. Why does it give 4 examples? So for each one we learn something. In Bamitzia we'll see, but it does not teach you anything regarding seh. So he says, David, leave a hakol kash. It's a problem according to everybody. Mishnah continues further, the very end of the Mishnah, it says, what happens enough for the Teiche falls inside the bird, Shoid, Chedesh, Shoid. Now, we're not sure if the Chedesh is applying to the Shoid itself is deaf and dumb, or the Shoid belongs to an owner who's deaf and dumb. Or a Shoid, is that the owner that's describing the animal? Or a cotton, is that the owner describing the animal? Chayiv, you have to pay. Says the Gemara, what do you mean by that? The owner of the chedesh cotton. What does that mean? And you're excluding if the owner is a responsible person. You don't have to reimburse him. Why would you be potter? Where does the Torah say that if the owner is a normal person and loses a cow in the boy, you don't have to pay? As the Gemara, it means the Mishnah means shahu chedesh, shahu shaita, shahu cotton. The child itself, the animal itself, is the chedesh shaita cotton. Says the Gemara. So what are you telling me? But how shahu pekech? The animal itself was a normal, intelligent animal. So here we have a shahu pekech, intelligent animal. Potter is potter. Why should you be potter? So first the Gemara acknowledges that you're not potter. Of course you have to pay for an animal. So why doesn't the Mishnah mention that? That's obvious. The shoy is an intelligent animal, falls in the bar. Of course, you have to pay for it. The chiddush is if the shoy is a shoy or a cut, whatever it is, maybe it's the shoy's own fault that it fell in. Maybe the balaboy should be exonerated. It's not his fault. Comes to teach the mission. No, even so, the owner of the boy has to pay because you put there a stumbling block. Like the boy come out. The mission is so Rabbi said the mission, of course. Well, I don't have to tell you sure should be carried. Of course you I will show you. I would think maybe it's the sure's fault because of its situation. Will the owner of the boy be exonerated? Come out along that no, he has to pay. So you're telling me that a shor you have to pay for, and tells you have to pay for sure. How are you going to explain this brisa? But I know the brisa nafel l'toich bardas. If a bardas intelligent falls inside the bar, potter you a potter, and the more assumes it's from an animal. My love shor bardas, and says clearly that you're exonerated from paying for a shor. What does it say shor? It says a bardas. A bardas usually is a description for a person. If a person falls in, an intelligent person falls in, you're exempt. As the Gemara says, so only intelligent person, and the person is not so intelligent falls in the bar, you have to pay. If it's not a bendas, I have to pay. And what's the problem? Maybe you do. If the Torah says it makes no distinctions whether the person, we don't do an IQ test to see what kind of person it was that fell into the bird. You're always exempt. So what does the Braisa mean? A person falls in who's intelligent. Elamai bendas mean bendas. It means a person falls in your potter because it comes from a genus of people, a species of which are people, and generally they're intelligent people. That's how you define a person. Doesn't matter what you personally are, and that's why you are potter. I have a problem with another Braisa. So you're telling me that an intelligent animal falls in, you have to pay. The time that the Braisa said not for the teiche shor bendas, it says this clearly describes the shor being intelligent. You potter. In fact, if the animal is an intelligent animal, the animal has to take some responsibility. And we are potter. The animal is a cheresh, the animal is a shaita, the animal is a cotton dafka. But the animal is intelligent potter. You know why? My time at the boile union maze, the animal should look out for itself and then walk. And if there's a hole there and the animal falls in, it's the animal's fault. Unless it's nighttime, it couldn't see, or the kerezob is a corner. Tanaway actually we looked at in the Braisa. No, for the Rosh Hashanah, if an animal falls in there, that's Chedesh Rosh Hashanah, the sumo or blind or mahala belaylo at night, and at night it doesn't matter if the animal tells you not, you can't see. But a pekeach or mahala belaylo potter, but pekeach by day you are potter. Next Mishnah, the Mishnah is coming to tell you a general rule that whenever the Torah uses the word behemoth, it's not necessarily specific. If the Torah says the word shoyer or chamor, it doesn't mean only shoyer, only chamor. It means all animals. Like by Shabbos, it says shoyer chamor. It doesn't mean only your ox has to rest in Shabbos or donkey, but all your animals, your horses, your cat, everything has to rest. And the Mishnah will give you a number of examples where the Torah uses the word shoyer or chamor, but it means all your animals. So we're not only limiting here to Bava Kama. It doesn't matter what kind of animal it is when it comes to the filos falling. Even though Torah says any animal, in fact, we just said even poultry, even fowl, anything falls, a living thing falls in the body, you're responsible for. Moshe Rabbeinu said that no animal should go grazing on Har Sinai. So it says in behema, any animal is included, even a chaya and even a bird. Tashlumi kefil, when it comes to paying double, if you steal an animal, you have to pay back double, even though it says the pasuk shor ad chamor chaim shnaim mishalom. It says exactly a shor and a chamor. Any animal is included. We'll see more later how. Ula Shabbos Aveda, when it comes to returning an Aveda, well, it says before chamor, it gives you a few animals. Any animals is you have to return. Lefrika, it says that you have to help an animal, dismantle an animal if it's in pain and if it carries a heavy load. It doesn't matter, even though the Torah uses an example of one animal, it doesn't matter what kind of animal it is, you have to help out. L'chasima, you're not a muzzle animal, any animal, even though Torah uses only a few examples. L'Shabbos, when it comes to Shabbos, same thing. Sorry, l'klayim, it says by klayim as well when you mate two animals, even though it says in the pasuk, behem t'chol lo yisarbiyah, you shouldn't mate, two different behemoths. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter chayah, it doesn't matter oif, there's always klayim. We're actually going to have a Merchul, an interesting question there about the climb of working, not just mating, of working. If a bird, if a fish together with an animal are pulling a plowshare, what happens and so on. We'll see in the Merchul. And so too, a chay is included, and oif is included, every bird is included, everything included. It's the same laws. So why does it say to consistently use examples of a shor and a chamor when every living creature is included? The Torah generally talks about what most people had in their house, a chamor for carrying loads, and had a shor for plowing their fields. So therefore, the Torah uses those as examples. But really, every animal, every living thing is included. So how do I know? We'll see. Then the finish boy, when it comes to falling the boy, is kesev yoshiv lebaylav siv. When it comes to Boyd, it says Kesev Yoshiv Lebaila, Kol the East Lebaila. So we know anything that has an owner, any living that has an owner, Yechai. Like we said before. Lahafrosh Hasina, when it comes to separating, that's why they shouldn't graze on Hasina. We say it means every animal, even though it says the pasuk im behema, but it means chai as well, and so on. It says im behema im ish. It says the pasuk whether it's a behema or whether it's a person, doesn't matter. Lo yichya, they won't live. You have to wait until the shofar is blown before they can go back. The chaya bechlal behema have. Now what? First of all, we have a general rule that chaya is always included in behemah because it says by kashrus. It says that zaysa chaya, this is the animal you should eat, and then it talks about behemoths, and or the other way around, and talks about behemoth and chayas. So everything's included. But how do I know birds? Im. The word im says im behemah. Im lerabah says ifus. Im comes to also include birds. The tashlume kefil. How do I know? When it comes to paying kefil, even though the pasuk says that mishar at chamer, and so how do I know chaim shnai mishalom? How do it's all included? Like we said before, we'll see that all animals are included. Al kol dvar pesh, chamer and shoy is just an example, but all animals are included. I was say I'll call Dvar Pesha. It says I'll call Dvar Pesha who klap. That's a general rule. Called of a pshia by what? It comes to include anything that is negligent that you have to pay, that you're responsible for. Lahashava Saveda. No, if you steal, you have to pay for whatever you stole. Even that means we'll see that you pay kefil not over there. It's not just all kinds of living creatures, including birds, even non-living creatures. If you steal something, a cold vapesha is coming a cloud to tell you no matter what you stole, you pay double when you return it. When it comes to Hashavas Aveda, it says L'chol Aveda Sachicha. Anything that they lost, they have a mitzvah Hashavas Aveda. That's all included. Leprika, when it comes to help dismantle an animal, Yal, if you learn out, even though it's the examples given is by chamer, by a donkey, nevertheless, Yal will learn out chamer mishabes. We learn out chamer mishabes is there Shabbat. Because when it comes to resting on Shabbos, it says chamer, your donkey, and it comes to prika, to dismantling, it says also your donkey. And just like regarding Shabbos, we know that any animal that you own has to rest on Shabbos, including birds. So therefore, also dismantling, that's how we say Shabbat. The chasima to muzzling, how do we know that? There it says shoy. The sachs shoy b'disha, you shouldn't muzzle your shoy. So yaliv shoy b'Shabbos. Just like by Shabbos, shoy doesn't mean only shoy, but any animal that you own. Same thing here. It says the sachs shoy, you shouldn't muzzle your shoy. It means any animal you own. Now, how we know by Shabbos, it doesn't mean only Shachamer, we'll soon see. What about Klayim? Yeah, climb. There's two kinds of climb. There's climb working together, two different animals, and climb of mating. So climb, if it's climb, the Chadisha, if it's climb of plowing, Yalif learn Shabbos. On Shabbos, they have to rest. And it says Shoy, over here it says Shoy, so we know also, just like over there means any animal here also. Climb the habo. Maybe what about climb when it comes to mating two different animals? How do you know include all other animals? Is yalav lonad behem b'Shabbos. That we said by Shabbos your behema has to rest, and it says behem when it comes to kalayim, to mixing different animals. So therefore, that's how we know that all animals are included. So now, since so much is based on Shabbos, the Gemara obviously wants to know how in the world do you know that on Shabbos it doesn't only mean Shoy v'Chamor. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shabbos, and on talking about Shabbos, Tanya, Rabbi Yossi says, Mishum Rabbi Shmuel, there's two sets of 10 commandments. You have Parshas Yisroi and you have Parshas Eschanam. So he says, B'dibris Shalishenis, in the first, as I said, it's a Dibris, it says, Avdecha, V'amoscha, U'v'hemtecha. It says, it does not say Shoy and Chamor, it just uses the generic term Behemtecha, which includes all your animals. Ubedibras acharenis, and then in Parshas Chanan there, Nema there it says that on Shabbos v'shorcha v'chamorcha chol b'hemtecha. The Torah adds shoy l'chamor, and then it says again v'chol b'hemtecha. Why does the Torah add shoy l'chamor? It's included. When if the Torah would have just said chol b'hemtecha, wouldn't you have included the shoy, an ox, and a chamor, a donkey? Lama yatsu. So why did the Torah highlight those two? Let me tell you. Ma shoy chamor homakan. Just like over here in Shabbos, when we say shoy chamor, are we limiting it to shoy chamor? No, because it says chol b'hemtecha. Chayav oiv ki yitzben. a chaya, a non-domesticated animal, or oif, a bird are included. Av kol chayiv oif gejben. So too, every chaya and every oif is included everywhere in the Torah. So let us say, that what. So that's how you learn from Shabbos, that everywhere it says chamayr or shoy, it means all living creatures. So you what? How do we know? I don't know. Amo, why don't we say who told you chayiv oif included? The Torah says behem tech. So Amo, let us say, very interesting, that behema the dibros that the behema of the first that says dibros is a cloud. Shorcha v'chamorcha, the dibros achrei prat. The shor chamoy, the second luchas is a prat, and we have a rule. Kol prat, prat. Since the Torah uses the behemtach as a prat, maybe it's only limited or more than that. There's a cloud that says behemtach in the first dibros. In the second dibros it says shorcha v'chamorcha. So let's say that's coming to limit. Ein bechlal elo masha prat, that only shor chamoy. That shor chamoy imi that learn anything else. And the Rishonim already ask. Klal prat, as we're having more makkahs in other places, have to be near each other. Here, so far, this is Parshas Yisro, this is Parshas Chanan. So Tosha says because they're both describing the Aseret Hadibros, and that's really, it's all the same. There's only one set of Aseret Hadibros. Therefore, and how do I know that? Because it says Zocher v'Shama b'Dibur Echad. It says Zocher Parshas Yisro, Shama Parshas Chanan, but they were said together. That means it's the same luchas, and therefore it's not considered far away from each other. So we're asking, it's a Klal prat. Answering more the obvious, it's a klal prat klal because it's right after the chol behemtcha. Amri the chol behemtcha di bezachrein the chol the kol klal prat klal. I don't know again a prat. Ma prat the bal chayim living creature of kol bal chayim, anything living. So that's how when it says, even though it says shavich chamor, it says also in the pasuk b'chol behemtcha. So it's a klal prat klal. So we compare to shavich chamor, anything living. Now we're going to repeat the entire Gemara we just learned 20 minutes ago. That with shavich chamor again are pre-distinctive, and maybe it's limited only to animals that are similar to shavich chamor. Not, for example, birds. I want to ask a question. Prat. Okay, you're right. It has to be similar to the prat. So let us say, just like the prat in the footage, metame, something that's in the veil is metame magamas, which is a behema and a chaya. Avkodava shavlos metame maga, only something which is metame by lifting or by him or by touching it. Aval oif is loy, but not birds. Amri, we say, if so, nichtav rachmana chad prata. Let the Torah write only shayr or only chamayr, and that's it. So the Gemara, just like we had before, exact same order. Why? We need both pratim. Sorry. Hi, Nifta Rachmana. Which prat do you think the Torah could have written, and the other one is extra? Because I'm going to say shayid. Have, I mean, when you need a cloud prat, the cloud tell you it's limited to living things. But if a Torah would only say shayid, and you want to tell me all living things, no, I would have thought it would be even more limiting. I would have thought only those animals that you brought in his beich have to rest in the Shabbos. But if they don't, if they're not going to be brought in his beich, then loy, then no. Kasher Rachmana, the Torah says chamoy. It says a donkey. The Kasher Rachmana, the Torah would have said chamoy, donkey. I mean a kodesh b'b'choyrein. Only those that have a b'choyer, like a sheep. Shein kodesh b'choyer, but something that does not have a b'choyer, like Kasher Rachmana shoyr. Says the Gemara, Ella. So again, so the choyer, let's only limit it to living animals. How do we know to include birds? Because it says in the pasuk, "B'shorcha v'chamorcha," the second luchas, and the chol, the word chol is extra. The chol and all, when all ribuyu. This is not just an extra klal. This is a ribuy. We have a klal, we have a ribuy. Ribuy is much more expansive than a klal, and therefore we're not going to dash in the klal protocol at all. We have a ribuy and marbe, everything, including birds. Says the Gemara, you can tell me every time it says the word kol, it comes to be much more expansive. When it comes to Maisa, the exhibit says kol, it says the word kol, and yet we dashin b'chlal prat, and we limit it to whatever is similar to the prat, and we don't say that kol is very expansive. What's the case there? The Tanya, we learn when a sata kesef, let's say you cannot bring all your fruits and vegetables, whatever it is, your Maisa to your slime, you transfer it to money, and then the money you bring with you. And what should you do with the money? When you come to Shalim, you should take that money, place it, and buy whatever your heart's desire is. Right? Which sounds like anything. It's a generic term. Then it says a klal. Then it's a pasuk about saying what you spend the money on cattle, on sheep, over yain and sheikh, wine and old wine, which is what a prat is limiting it. And then it says whatever you desire, chazav ekol. Klal, prat, we learn after that has to be similar to the prat. What do we know what similar prat? Ma prat food, just like these pratim are all examples of pri me pri. That all the examples are what that everything here comes from something else. For example, cattle is born from a mother, or even wine comes from a grape, and or shecher means beer comes from dates. So everything comes from something else, and also gedule karka, they all get ultimately come from the ground. Even animals feed from the ground. So too, kol prime dule karka. So we're going to compare what can you spend the money on anything which is similar to these protein. So, and even though it says in pasuk clearly the chol asher tavan avshcha, and we're not saying here that's totally expansive. You can buy whatever you want. No, it's still there are still limits here. And you said that b'chol is a riboy. It's clear here the kol is merely a klal, and a klal is not that expensive. It's still limited by the protein. So what it says, Amri, I'll tell you, bakol is a klal and kol is a riboy. The difference it says bakol or kol. Over here it says in the pasuk b'chol asher b'chol. Within sounds like already there's still a limit, so that's why we say it's merely a klal. When it says kol, all of it, there's nothing limiting it. Then it's a riboy, is coming all expensive. Yiboy say another answer is I can argue kol nami klal. Maybe you're right. Maybe even the word kol, everything is also a klal, and therefore it's limited by the prat. Miu high kol the hoch, but when it comes over here, when it says kol. Kol behemtecha by Shabbos is riboy. When it comes to Shabbos, it's a riboy. Why is that? But the Havel Michtav, which should have just says ubedhemtecha kiliksi b'dirushanis. In the first that says the Yisrael, it just says behemtecha. There's no examples given of shor chamar, just behemtecha. So in the second says the Yisrael said the same thing. Because of a kol behemtecha. Why does it say the chol behemtecha? In the first one it says also. The first one says ubehemtecha and your animals. Here it says uvechol behemtecha. The chol behemtecha. Why say the chol? When it's not necessary, he's coming to add something more than what is in the first dibris, and therefore, because it doesn't repeat what it says in the first dibris, it's coming to marbe what and coming even birds. So now that you're telling me that kol ribu, Mora says you said before that kol is a ribu, big kol is a cloud, but kol everything means a ribu. Is behemtecha the dibris for the shaynes, the behemtecha of the first 10 commandments. If you're telling me the way you said before that kol behemtecha comes to include every living creature, so why taka does it say shoy v'chamoy at all in the second ibris, and why does it say stam behemtecha in the first ibris? Why does it say that? Why is it behemtecha? It should say kol behemtecha. Why does it say the word just behemtecha in the first ibris and shoy v'chamoy in the second one? Obviously, each one of these words is coming to tell you that where it says anywhere else in the Torah behemtecha, it's far more reaching than just behemtecha. Wherever it says shoy, it's only a paradigm, it's only an example, but it's far more reaching. The same thing chamoy, and the Gemara will explain where. Amri will tell you shoy. What is shoy? No, why it says shoy like mudei to teach you. When it says don't muzzle the mouth of a shoy, it's extra the shoy here. Totally, you don't need shoy by Shabbos. It's exer shoy. Will tell you just like by Shabbos, shoy means all animals. The same thing applies to like sachsim shoy, but you don't muzzle the shoy. It doesn't mean only the shoy. It means all animals, including birds. Chamoy, the word chamoy is extra like muri. Chamoy leplika. When it comes to dismantling an animal, even though it says that chamoy. You see the chamoy and so on and so forth is falling under his bundle. It doesn't mean only chamoy means any animal or any bird, just like we find by Shabbos chamoy zekra. And what about behemtecha? Where do you find behemtecha? To tell you, like mudi behemtecha leklayim comes to tell you by klayim when it talks about mating by klayim. It says the behemtecha. So we look at Shabbos. It says behemtecha. It doesn't mean only behemtecha. It means anything. Same thing applies to klayim. So the Gemara, if so, I'll feel if so that that when it says behemtecha, we're learning klayim from Shabbos. What do we know about Shabbos? That not only your animals have to rest, but a person. So l'chayda by klayim, the din is by klayim that if a person works together with his cow, there's no klayim. It's only animals with each other, different species, but not if a person. If you're learning from Shabbos, why don't you just say just like Shabbos, a person has to rest. Use the same zeh shava behemtecha to exclude a person that a behema also is not allowed to work with an adam. Otherwise, it'll be climb. Says the Gemara. If so, also a person. Why we learn Adam mutanim kula lachris v'limshach. A person is allowed to work with an animal. Papa says Papanoi, the people from Papano, or the students of Papano, time of them is they know exactly why a person is permitted to work with an animal, and we don't live from Shabbos. Umana, who is the world is a student from Papanoi? That's Rab Acha Bar Yaakov. And we said very nice things about him before. Amakra, he says, it says in Pasuk, L'man Yenuach Avdecha v'Amoscha Kamoicha. It says here that your servant and your slave should rest just like you. So we learn from this pasuk. What are we comparing Eved and Amma to you? Lahanocha and the rest of that pasuk. Lahanocha kasha. The fact that they have to rest on Shabbos. That's the only thing that we're comparing them all to a person. But not when it comes to Klayim. Now when it comes to Klayim, other things we learn from the Sukkim, don't introduce the person to that. Over